This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, I'm Michael O'Malley with EDC Utah and the Rapid Response Team. We're here with Jim Herrin, who is the director of the Salt Lake Region Small Business Development Center at the Miller campus of Salt Lake Community College. Jim's put together a tool, a PPP Forgiveness Calculation Model, and he's going to walk us through here. Jim, who's this Excel spreadsheet for?
Yes, for small business that has received a PPP loan. And so this is, so they can do the calculations needed for the application on that loan to get the forgiveness.
And you put this together, took a while, but what benefit do you see it providing a small business?
Okay, well, the loan application itself does not look very hard. Okay, there's not a lot of entry that you have to make into it, but the application with the instructions are 11 pages, and calculating this is really very onerous. It'll take a long time. There's a lot of variables involved. There's what ifs. There's just a number of things that can mess you up in calculating this. So this is not only to save time, but it's to save a lot of frustration with the small businesses we work with. There's, I would say most of them are not in business to do a lot of math and a lot of accounting and things like that. They're in business to make money. And so I thought they're going to need some help with this. And so I decided to create something like this. It was a bigger project than I thought it would be, but it works pretty good.
So a time saver and a keep you from pulling your hair out.
Yes, exactly.
Well, great. I'm going to change the view here so you can walk us through how to use the tool.
Okay.
Fire
All
away.
right. Okay, you can see everything okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so on the first worksheet, basically there's three small instructions. There's a disclaimer also that basically make sure you talk with your CPA and or attorney or financial professional to make sure that your loan application is okay. This should do what you need it to do, but it's good to have a second pair of eyes to do that. And then you can also contact an SBDC advisor. We have SBDCs throughout the state. Just go onto the website at utahsbdc.org and find the location that you're closest to. All of the advisors we have will have access and do have access to this model and can help you with filling it out if you need that assistance. Okay, we're going to start from the end. What it spits out for you, and here is the calculated information that you need for your loan application. I put here also, we need to make sure we get that on the site. Two is where you go to download the form, and the forms are you can do them through your computer. They're included with that download, so you don't have to print them out and handwrite them. Okay, so this part here is calculating the costs that you incurred with your PPP funds, okay, and what you use them for. All right. This here it totals any reduction in the wage or salary, the reduction in forgiveness of the wage and salary, because you reduce somebody's salary or wage. And then this line here just subtracts it from this total that you use it, that you've spent. And then the reduction quotient is basically your FTE reduction. If you had an FTE, stands for full-time employee or full-time equivalent, which is essentially 40 hours or more, is one full-time person. Part-time people are basically they're less than 40 hours, and if they're working 20 hours, it's they're a week, they're a 0.5 FTE. Okay, but this is the reduction quotient because they were this company that we're talking about, a little bit less, fewer FTEs. So a 0.97 reduction quotient. Okay, there's a modified total it lists. It lists the total loan amount that the company had received. And then the payroll costs, if of this loan with this reduction quotient, if you were to receive the total amount in forgiveness, the payroll costs would be around there to be 75%. And then this is the amount, it takes the lesser of all of these, okay, and it provides, this is the amount of forgiveness you will receive on your loan, okay? The rest of it will need to be paid back, okay?
And all those cells, all those cells in column B are feeding off of other tabs in your worksheet, I take it.
That's right. That's right. Okay. You don't want to fill anything out on here. It just will calculate everything for you, and then what's on here, it goes by the line that's on the application. So you just put that number in the application line.
Fantastic.
Okay, and then you have Schedule A. You have to fill out a Schedule A. This is what also feeds into this loan application. Is taking, the cash compensation that your employees receive. These are the non-highly compensated employees, those that make 100,000 or more regularly. These are those.
Yep.
These are the FTEs, the full-time equivalent of the number of employees you have, full-time and part-time together. And this is the wage reduction calculated from another spreadsheet. Okay, then you have cash compensation. This was to your highly compensated employees and how many FTEs of them there were. And then this is the other payroll costs. This is the compensation that the owners received of the PPP funds and the total payroll costs. Okay. And then the reduction calculation is, the FTEs that you had calculated for your loan application for your chosen period that you were going to determine your average costs that you would apply loans toward. Okay, so and then your total FTEs at the end of June. Okay, and then this is a little bit less than your pre-crisis FTEs, and so this is the percentage of that. Okay, so that calculates those. Now, what feeds into this and this a bit is you have to have these tables. And table 1 is your regular employees, okay, those that are not highly compensated. This is filled out automatically from the other worksheets, okay, and it's going to calculate the cash compensation that each received, the average FTE that they were during the 8-week period, and 0.63. You can see that that person is 0.63 of a full-time person. Okay.
Got it.
Then we have and then it gives because he was less than what he was before, there was a reduction that takes away from the forgiveness. Okay, this second table, that's the highly paid employees, and the cash compensation for the 8 weeks cannot be more than $15,385. Okay, so don't pay more than that for the 8 weeks for each employee, and then their FTEs, and then there's owner's cash compensation if they were paid by the funds. Okay, these again are all automatically calculated. Okay, now the calculations, you don't put anything on this, but this is where the detail of the calculations are. And this worksheet is calculating the full-time equivalents. Okay, and it's comparing it to the different periods. Okay, you have your 8 weeks that you spent the funds on. Okay, and then you have your PPP application chosen period. Okay, whatever that was that you initially started when you applied for the loan. Okay, there's a FTE reduction exceptions, and we'll discuss that in a few minutes. But what that does, if you have a FTE reduction exception, you don't lose the FTE amount on that. Okay, it's an exception. It doesn't affect your total FTEs that you have to account for. Okay, then there's safe harbor, which calculates you have to have by the end of June, you need to have the same number of FTEs to receive full forgiveness. So by June 30th, you need to have the same as you do on February 15th of this year. Okay, and this February 15th to April 26th is another range that you have to calculate for how many FTEs you had during that period of time. FTEs are again calculated by average hours per week that were worked. Okay, so on this one alone, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different dates or date ranges that you have to calculate
for each employee.
For each employee,
right? That
you have to calculate FTEs. Okay, so that's not an easy process to do, and then it tells you whether you've met that safe harbor, which allows you to not have a reduction in your loan forgiveness as long as you've achieved the same number of FTEs by June 30th. Okay. Okay, now you also have to have not only FTEs, but you have to have the same level of compensation paid out to employees during this time. Okay, so there's steps in the application process that it shows you to go through. Step 1, step 2, step 3. Okay. All right, so step 1 is looking at your comparison of the 8-week period, what was made, and your first 3 month of the year period. And it's by rate. Okay, it's not by total cash compensation. You're looking at wage rate or you're looking at annual salary, and you're comparing those. Okay, and then you're looking at, was there any reduction in there? Well, this person here had half of his wage reduced. Okay, so if he was at $30 an hour, he went down to 15. All right, then it looks at step 2, which compares June 30th to during the crisis, February 15th to April 26th, to February 15th, which was pre-crisis, and looks at see what that did. Okay. Okay. Then, if you had an FTE exception, it's not going to penalize you for that particular employee. Okay. And then, was the safe harbor met with the salary or wages? Okay. This first one was not met. Their wage rate was reduced. Okay. And it looks at, was it reduced by more than 75% of the original wage? Okay. And if it was, then there's a loss of, to the forgiveness. Okay. So with this particular employee, they lost $1,800 from what their original rate was. And so that's how much the forgiveness was reduced by. Okay.
Understood.
So all of these website are worksheets that I've just shown you that are colored blue or green tabs. You don't put anything in. Okay, that's just for calculations and results. Okay. The yellow tabbed worksheets are where you have to add information.
Again,
Okay.
We're working backwards through the process here.
We were just showing you what these data inputs that you will be making are going to result in.
Understood.
Okay.
So here's where you're doing the work.
That's right. That's right. This is where your work is. Okay. So you're only entering information into the green shaded cells. All right. Don't enter anything into white shaded cells. That's where some calculations are done. Okay, so these 3 employees, the employee identifier is the last 4 digits of their social security number. Okay, whether they're hourly or salaried employees. But let's go back up here. I forgot to cover this. So the loan amount for this particular company, they received $90,000. Their covered start date, okay, their loans were deposited into their bank account on April 25th. Okay. If they had a pay period, if they have their pay periods that are bi-weekly, okay, so every 2 weeks or more frequently, then they would enter a different date right here. That would be the first day of the pay period following the deposit of bank funds. Okay. All right. So this is going to calculate 8 weeks, 56 days is what it's going to calculate from the covered period or the alternate covered period start dates. Okay. This next area here is you're going to select how you want your part-time employees calculated, okay? They can either be calculated as a percentage of full-time, okay, which is as a percentage of 40 hours a week. So their average weekly compensation would be divided by 40, or their, not compensation, but their average weekly hours would be divided by 40 hours to determine what FTE they are. Okay, so if they work 30 hours, they're a 0.75 FTE. Okay, so you select that, or you select that if any part-time worker that works less than 40 hours a week average, they're just automatically a 0.5 FTE. Okay, but it has to be consistent throughout the calculations. So with this model, it is. I mean, you can't change anything to have one of them be this and one of them be this. But you need to think about what's going to give you the best effect, and you can run this model and look and see what's the best for you after you've completed it. Then just change this to this and see what's going to give you the better forgiveness amount. Okay, so after you do that, okay, you're going to enter this information: hourly or salaried employee. Okay, then here's where you do the FTE reduction exceptions. I mean, you're going to mark an X if they have that exception. Now, this is the explanation of what that is, and basically it's if you had to furlough an employee, lay them off or something like that, and you went to hire them back and they didn't want to come back, okay, and you tried your best to get them back, okay, you shouldn't be penalized for that. And so that's an FTE reduction exception. So their status as of I believe it was February 15th or whenever it was, that's maintained. Okay. The other way that you can get that exception is if they were fired for cause. Okay, they did something bad. If they voluntarily resigned, okay, you shouldn't be penalized if they did that. Or if they voluntarily requested fewer hours, okay, and they received that reduction in hours. If you gave them a reduction in hours, but they didn't ask for it, then you cannot include that as an exception. Okay. All right. So, okay, your chosen period for when you applied for the PPP loans. Okay, that's where you're going to enter your average hours per week worked. Okay. All right, then this is going to calculate your range for the 8-week period based on some information you're going to fill out after this. Okay, then you're going to enter your average salary or hourly wage rate and average hours worked per week. Here it's just for hourly workers only those that are earning an hourly wage. Okay. And you're going to enter in these areas what their rate was, not their total compensation. So $30 an hour, or here's $83,200 a year, $20 an hour. Okay, so for this range, and then for this day, February 15th, what was that as of that date? Okay, average salary or wage rate, hours per week. Okay, then the same for February 15th to the 26th, what was that? And then for the pay period that includes June 30th, 2020. So you won't know that until the end, but you enter the same thing there, okay? So, you know, the calculations you do have to do are basically finding your rates and your averages for those periods for those particular dates.
And Jim, I want to get back to that after you finish with taking us through the other two tabs, and the question would be, what are the ingredients you should put together before you tackle this? But we'll get to that.
Okay. The other table 2 information is your highly paid employees. You're just going to be entering, you know, what their cash compensation was for the 8 weeks, what their average FTE was during that time, and what was their average FTE for the chosen period, that period before or when you applied for the loan. Okay, and then if there's any information on the owners, if they had received their compensation during that time. Okay, then you're going, this is the FTE calculations for the 8-week period. All right, and you can do similar thing for determining your average hours for other periods too. We're looking at average hours per week. Okay, so these are where you put the hours in. Okay, and it's going to calculate the average hours. I mean, they don't have to be all the same. You know, if we enter 30 here, whoops, I'm going to have that number lock on. Okay, if we enter, let's say 30 here and 35 here, okay, that's going to give us a different average number of hours and a different FTE. Okay, now this person here, their stops during the payroll period for 5/29. Okay, this is one where they had quit, and so they get that exception, that FTE exception. But it calculated this. It's not going to utilize the FTE part in the calculations. So this is what you do with the employees. This is just hours only, average hours. It'll calculate per week for that 8-week period. Okay. And then this is the 8-week tracking for the cost, the compensation that was paid for that 8 weeks. Okay, per employee. And you put that down, it's going to total the costs here, and it's going to calculate an average weekly compensation, all right, which will be used. Then you put in the benefits, the other payroll costs that you incurred during that time, and then your other eligible costs, which are mortgage interest, rent, or utilities. And, you know, utilities also include phone and internet. They also include transportation, travel. There's been no guidance on what that means. And so in absence of guidance, you know, I guess you can pretty much put any transportation you have, whether it's gas or maybe it's even vehicle interest, loan interest, mileage, that kind of thing. So
again, a conversation with your CPA.
Yes, exactly. That's very helpful. Okay, so that's all you enter into these.
So you're just touching the yellows, the first, those.
Yes, you're just doing your yellows and just filling in the information on those.
So,
okay,
Jim, the ingredients question, what, before you jump into the spreadsheet, what should you have on hand? What will make that data entry process easier.
Okay, you need, the main thing you need is your reports on the salaries and wages and hours worked for those different ranges. So it goes from the, your chosen period from the PPP loan application time, and then it goes January 1st to March 31st, February 15th to April 15th, February 15th, and when there's a specific date, that means that for the pay period that falls in that date, where that date falls, okay, what is the average? What is the average for the week as far as pay rate, annual salary rate, your hours per week, that kind of thing, and the pay that you made, the average pay that was made during that week. And then June 30th, let's see, was that? I think that was the dates that you have to do. They're all on this first. It shows chosen date, the 8-week period. The 8-week period, yeah, you'll want your information. So all of this is your payroll information from these times. You want to have that available so you can put in the right information. And then you want to have, your accounting system ledger for the 8-week period as to when you made payment on other things.
Right.
But also remember too, this is not only what you've paid, but what you've incurred during this time. So so if you have, for example, a rent payment, but you don't pay it until after, right after the 8 weeks is up, you've incurred that cost still. Or maybe a utility payment or something like that. If you'd incurred the cost, but you haven't paid it yet, then that you want to enter that information also.
Right. And what sort of timeline, what sort of deadline have you been hearing on putting this?
Yeah, there hasn't been a deadline that's been put out there by the government. The form, the application form that they provide, the expiration for that is October 31st of this year. I don't know if that is the latest you can submit it, but we don't know that yet. The submissions you probably don't want to make until after June 30th because you need the information from that date, and you'll be submitting this to the bank that you applied for the loan through. So they'll be able to provide some guidance on all of that also.
So talk to your CPA at the start, talk to your bank towards the second half and end of the process is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. And I think, before you go to your bank, just make sure that the numbers pass muster with your CPA, that he feels comfortable with it. And then after you submit it to the bank, they have 60 days to get back to you. Okay, so it's not going to be next week before you hear, when you hear that you're going to be forgiven for whatever amount. So it's like this whole process of these loans and all, it's going to take some time for them to get through everything.
Well, this is an impressive body of work, Jim. This will be a very useful tool for all the Utah businesses that have received PPP. Is there any closing message you want to give on this?
Yes, one of the most important things to do is to make sure that you document everything, that you have documents, that you have support for everything on this forgiveness that you're asking for. And so we don't know, how that's going to be reviewed. Your bank will tell you if they need any other documentation other than these applications and other forms that you have to submit. And we don't know how, they're going to look into it, if they have any responsibility to do any kind of a, audit or review of documents and things like that. So you want to be prepared for that. The SBA itself, you're likely not to have an audit from them. They're mainly looking at those that have been loaned more than $2 million, but they might spot check here and there. So you always want to be prepared and just keep those documents. And I believe for about 6 years, you're supposed to keep those particular documents on these loans.
Great. Well, Jim Herrin, Director of the Salt Lake Region Small Business Development Center, thank you for your time. What was that, as our close, what was that web address again for the SBDCs if people have questions?
Okay, it's utahsbdc.org. So utahsbdc.org. And they can select they can just go there and request a meeting, and then it'll go to whatever area that you're closest to, the center that you're closest to, and then they'll contact you and set up a meeting. We're also getting this put up on that website too, this model for the loan forgiveness, and I believe you guys are going to be having it available also.
Correct.
And so we're here to help however we can. We've been working with businesses, small businesses. That's all we do. During the crisis, we've been with small businesses on the front lines throughout the state since this crisis began, and we're told a lot of times we're the best kept secret, we're just out working. Our whole impetus is to help small business grow and succeed, and to help people start small business. So there's no cost to our assistance that we provide, and we're happy to do it.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike.